Whenever I talk about my process, well, it frequently goes viral because it's so f***ed up, first of all.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Hello, listener. Welcome to the show. How you doing, Doug?
I'm good. Nick, how are you, sir?
I'm grand. This is going to be a fabulous show. As usual, it's brought to you by Vellum, best formatting solution in the whole galaxy. Oh, a little thing. I know this is fairly obvious, right? So Vellum has language selection. So we've been doing, I know you've been doing it, and I've been doing translations. We've just been doing some French translations. So when I upload my manuscript in French translation, it red underlines because it's got a spell checker in it because it's cool like that. You know, I know people who actually write in Vellum as they don't use Scrivener, they don't use words. They write in Vellum, which you can actually do. And it's a great tool for doing that. So anyway, it's got a great spell checker. So it red underlines. All you do is select the language, select French, and all of a sudden, all but a few of those red lines go away. And those red lines stay there when you've spelt something wrong or it's a name it doesn't recognize and that kind of thing. But it's a good last kind of spell checker thing for you when you go through. It's quite useful.
Yeah, cause, that's one of those things that I do often, even in my work. I'll do a little bit of Spanish or some other foreign language. I just wrote something with Russian. And of course, it doesn't matter what spell check it is. It's going to catch that and go, oh, you misspelled this Russian word. I don't know how it doesn't know. You'd think they could figure that out, but Vellum's got it figured out for you. So pretty awesome.
Cool. So our guest today is New York Times bestselling and Reese's Club pick thriller author
Reese Witherspoon?
Reese frickin' Witherspoon. And it's Gillian McAllister who will be joining us for a chat shortly. But first, we have a listener question. It's from Tony in Concord, North Carolina, which is very close to where Cheryl and I are with our RV at the moment. So the question is, what fueled your decision to be Amazon exclusive instead of wide?
Oh, okay. That's a really good question. We get that a lot. I have a little bit different perspective. I was actually published back in 2011 before Kindle Unlimited ever existed. And I did publish wide. At that time, it was not as wide as you have now. I don't think we had Apple Books or some of the other ones that are out there, but I definitely published with Barnes & Noble and Kobo and Smashwords and I think a few other places. But even back then, before the Kindle Unlimited came out, Amazon was the biggest vendor out there. So I made most of my money on there. And then when they came around and offered the exclusivity, which gave you Kindle Unlimited, and at that time it was something else. Koll, Koll, was, instead of having the KU pages, KENP is KOLL. It's really weird. But they're like, hey, if you just come to us directly, we'll pay you more. And I was like, well, I'm not making that much. I think I made a couple of sales on Kobo and Barnes & Noble, and that was it. So it was an easy decision at that point. And now that I've been doing it for so long, a bulk of my income comes from Kindle Unlimited. So if I were to decide to go wide, which is a legitimate choice, it's just I'd have to rebuild that audience and make sure that I rebuild that chunk of money that I make. So for right now, I'm happy with wide. I do love the visibility that it gives us. I think especially if you're starting out, putting your book in Kindle Unlimited gives people an opportunity to test you out. It's easy for them to go, oh, I can read for quote unquote free instead of buying for $4.99. So I think that gives you an opportunity. So, but it's not the only way, like we always say. So how about you, sir?
Yeah, for me, probably, I hate to say it was just the easier way, but there was, to a certain extent, the decision was based around taking a path of least resistance. It seemed like the easiest thing to do. When I started back in 2019, going into 2020, when I was seriously sort of going, okay, I want to give this thing a run, being an author, it was kind of overwhelming, the idea of going wide and as an indie having to do this, all these interfaces everywhere. And I know there's some companies you go one-stop shop and they'll do it for you, but then they take a cut for doing it. So it seemed like a fairly obvious path. And at 2019, 2020 was on the tail end of kind of the gold rush. It was really, it started kind of flattening off at 2017 to 2019, but there was still so much buzz about the growth and everything and Kindle Unlimited. So it seemed like an obvious thing for me to do. And I think the biggest thing is, and I've been happy with it, it's worked out for me, right? So I think the biggest thing is it's a big decision and it's one that you have to make, or it's best to make early on. and commit to a path. It's very hard to jump back and forth around. It gets to be hard to do a series in one wide and then a series in exclusive, because if you're in two different genres, okay, but if you're trying to overlap your audience across your series, now they're confused. So it's just tricky, but that's why I did it. All right. On to this week's guest, Gillian McAllister, New York Times bestseller. Look, she's hit the New York Times bestseller list 5 times out of 9 published books. And she's hit the Sunday Times, which is the UK Sunday Times bestseller list, all 9 books that she's released. That's going pretty good, don't you think? Let's talk to this young lady. Gillian, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're in the middle of a book tour in the UK to promote the paperback of your new release, right?
Yes, I am. It's been, trains, planes and automobiles today.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. We really do. So give us a little bit of background on how you first started getting into writing and when you were first published.
Yeah, so I, like many writers, have written for most of my life, certainly all of my adult life. I did an English degree before training to be a lawyer, and I did the English degree because I always wanted to be a writer, but I didn't really know how to do that. Like, I came from a very ordinary family. We didn't have money, and I just didn't know you could maybe write a novel age 21 and make money from it. So I became a lawyer, and I started writing when I was off sick, seriously. So I had mononucleosis, which called glandular fever over here. And I always say everybody knows somebody that got that really badly, and I'm that person. So I was off sick for like a year and really ill, like very disabled with it, couldn't walk, use a wheelchair, etc. So, and that is when I changed from dabbling in writing. Like, I'd always had a blog and it had quite a good following, but I started then writing seriously in fiction because I wanted to. I had the time. I was in my bed nearly all the time, so I just sat with a laptop and did that. But I also sort of felt like I might need a plan B physically. So that is really where the sort of nascent of my career was.
I love the fact that you actually thought that being a lawyer might be easier than becoming an author. To me, being a lawyer, that's like climbing Everest to me.
Kind of was, in that, like, you can become a lawyer and it does pay you.
That's true. It's in your hands, right? It is in your hands.
Yeah, like you don't have to do a year's work and then decide if somebody's going to pay you like you do when you're just an aspiring novelist. But yeah, it was law's pretty hard on the body, actually, like very, you have to be there all the time, and it's pretty hard on the brain. So yeah, it was, probably not the career for me, really. But I then started writing that novel and sort of wrote alongside. I returned to work. I finished, because I got sick in law school. So I finished law school and then started what we call over here the training contract, where you kind of do like a vocational 2 years in order to qualify, and wrote the book on the side. And then eventually actually got to a point where I queried in 2013. So I got sick in 2008. So like quite a long time of doing both. And then I didn't get an agent on that first query, but I got full requests, which really lit a rocket up me in terms of feeling like this might be achievable. Like, it's not just sort of like your father has to edit the Times and then you get a book deal through that, So I then wrote another novel, and that took a year, and I did that alongside full-time work because I was back properly, and got signed in 2014, and it went on to submission in 2014 and didn't get publisher. Despite me thinking I had an agent now and I was going to get like a 7-figure deal like immediately.
Right. So when you say you got signed to an agent, you'd queried an agent, you got signed to the agent, now the agent is pitching it to the publishers. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I edited that manuscript because a lot of the publishers had the same concern, which was actually that it was genre blending, which is kind of ironic because that's a little bit what I'm known for. I edited out the genre blending and it went on to submission again and didn't sell again. And then as part of that submission, I had said what I was working on next, and it was more of a thriller. This was more of a sort of hybrid crime and sort of women's fiction novel. So I wrote the thriller. So by now we're into 2016, and then I got a deal with Penguin then. So kind of a long time and many rejections.
Still, not as many as that's actually less rejections than than most get. That's we often talk to people. They send out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of proposals. So that's brilliant. And
I do think there's a lot of people who think you're going to get, once you get an agent, that's it, and they don't quite understand. There's a whole process behind it. So
that's just step one, right?
Yeah, I found it much easier to get an agent than to get a publisher. And even when I got my publisher, I had one offer. The advance was less than the mid-list. It wasn't really set for success. I wouldn't say, like, not really kind of best-selling success. Kind of some dominoes lined up. And, that's happened several times in my career. I can look at particular moments of basically good luck, and sometimes people working hard on my books, including me, but often just good fortune. I was sort of up and away from there, but I didn't get published in the States until 2019. And then I had a novel out in 2019 that didn't sell it didn't go through the tills very well. And then a novel in 2020 that, like everything, didn't sell. And then I left that publisher and took a new novel on submission. And even then only had one offer from my current publisher. I had 11 rejections in a row, and I had walked from my existing publisher. So I was really feeling the heat. Like, I turned money down and finally got this 12th kind of response that was an acceptance. And then that novel is the one that got Reese and kind of changed everything.
So now was that Wrong Place, Wrong Time in America?
Yeah, that's right. That's Wrong Place, Wrong Time.
Okay, so let's step back again. So the first novel out was Everything But the Truth, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And this blows me away. Your debut published novel, and it went to number 6 on the Sunday Times bestseller list. All those people that rejected you going, didn't we turn her down?
It just goes to show, because I think sometimes I think you have to show people what you mean rather than pitch it. And I think that kind of is a lesson that just is not always right. But yeah, like, it was a paperback original. So, modest advance, but Penguin, they did a great cover. I think it's a good title. And it just did really well. It got, like, over here, you have to get supermarkets to really sort of, not always, but they really help you to become a bestseller. And it got all of the supermarkets. And it just kind of went off, which surprised me. I think it surprised everyone.
I think the equivalent, Doug, in America is like, when she's saying getting in the supermarket, it's kind of like getting a Target or Walmart over here.
So when you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm number 6. I mean, that's what, first of all, like, how did you feel about that?
Yeah, it was extraordinary. And I was still working as a lawyer full time when it happened. And I was actually at my desk when I found out. And it was quite like a sort of cognitive dissonance, because everything feels different kind of internally. But the thing, like, I always think success is sort of made up of emails in a way. Like, it's like not that tangible. Like, you're not like a band that sells at an arena and you can look at people consume what you've created, So it was quite strange. And I was very anxious for the 6 months after it happened. And I don't really know why. I think there was a period of adjustment. And I sort of knew then that I kind of wanted to leave the law. And I think that I'd kind of been in denial about that. So there was like a little bit of reprioritizing what I wanted. You would think I'd be ecstatic, but actually I became enormously anxious.
That was my next question, was how did that do for, like, okay, well, ready to go for the next book, or are you like, now you're like, well, what if it doesn't do nearly as well? So that anxiety, I think, is something people don't take into account and think about. So it's a valid. So, like, how did that do for you in proceeding to the next book that you were going to do?
I had already written the next by the time it was published.
Oh, and it's easy. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, and it had a great hook. It was like a sliding doors novel about a woman who does and doesn't hand herself in after committing a crime on the way home from a night out. So I felt like confident in it and that it was high concept. But yes, there is pressure after success. And also, I actually kind of went mad about other things. So I've never really been that anxious about writing, but I started to have very generalized anxiety, sort of patterns of rumination, I don't know, a lot of panic attacks. And it took me a long time to come back to a place of sort of sanity after that. But, I'm sort of glad it happened, because all of the stuff that happened later with the Reese pick was so crazy. And I sort of knew how to handle it, because I'd had this early, difficult period.
Yeah, that would be helpful. But yeah, it's interesting. I have a really good friend of mine she suffers from anxiety a lot too. In the same way, whenever she finishes a book, she has panic attacks every time. And it's not about the writing; it's just about it's something I don't understand. But it is interesting to hear other people talk about it. So
yeah, it's not about the book; it's about the supermarket or something.
So basically, it's certainly in the UK. You've been putting out about a book a year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And with the trad model, how much time of that year do you get to actually write the book before it starts going into the whole editing process and everything?
I write 365 days a year. So really, when I send a book off to be edited, I start another. And that's because it takes me a year. So I have to use the whole year. And so for a third to half of the year, I'm spinning 2 plates. And it's only really once the edited novel stops getting edited, and then I have a sort of 7 to 8 month period alone with another book. But I'd spin both for ages, and I just don't know how people write a book a year without doing that. I see some authors I finished my page proof, so now I'm going to start thinking about my next book. And I think, but then you're 5 months into a 12-month deadline. But I'm quite a slow writer in some ways, and I do need the whole time.
So since we're talking about writing, let me ask you this. Are you a plotter or a pantser or somewhere in between? Do you just kind of have a big outline?
Well, whenever I talk about my process, it frequently goes viral because it's so fucked up, first of all.
Oh, just wait until you hear ours.
Yeah, I mean, it always derails interviews as well when I talk about it. But basically what I do, unfortunately, is I make a very detailed plan on Microsoft Excel. I use the boxes as a storyboard.
Finally, somebody that
both of us do that too. So you're with us so far. So.
Are you? Oh, how interesting. I just think it makes complete sense. It's an electronic storyboard. You can move things around and delete things. So then I get my agent and sometimes my editors to sign off on that. And then I write quite quickly, maybe 10 to 12,000 words a week, according to that plan. So it, takes me 6 to 10 weeks, depending on what I've got going on, to write a first draft. During that first draft, never before, about 80,000 words, I have a huge epiphany about what the book is really about, and I delete the draft fully.
That's where I was wondering where this would derail. That it just crashed into the scenery right there.
And then I start again on a blank document, and then I know exactly what I'm doing, and it goes okay from there. But I've done it. I've just deleted my 11th book, so I've done it 11 for 11. I don't recommend it as a process.
Oh my God. I'd walk off into the distance if I dumped 80,000 words.
I've lost 3,000 to 5,000 words and I cried for a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If I get to the end, if I write 500, that I'm like, oh, I don't like that. It kills me. So, wow, that's crazy. So do you honestly just delete it, or do you just set it aside and you delete it so you can't reference it? You can't.
I delete it so I can't get it back. Yes, because do you know there's some sort of war analogy? I'm sketchy on which war, where people burnt their boats and they couldn't get home, so they had to figure it out. It's that, and I find it when it happens. I'm always glad of the epiphany. I find it very liberating. It's only taken 8 weeks, say, and then I start again, and I know exactly what's going on. It's very strange, and I wish it wasn't this way because it feels inefficient. But really, I sort of think maybe I'm doing a version of what people who write 500 words a day are doing, where they tinker over and over, whereas I sort of do it in a macro sense of very big drafts that get chucked in the bin and then start again.
Well, we're big proponents as there's no right or wrong way to do this process. It's whatever you do, you right. So, and we were chatting the other day with an author that has this ridiculous word output.
Yeah, he was doing, what did he say, 3,000 words an hour?
And then we were chatting with Lindy, and Lindy said she did an outline, and it was like 50,000 words. It's like, that's a book, Lindy. Obviously, on the indie side of things, for us, I mean, we're putting out 4 to 6 books a year, and we're not considered prolific by any means in the indie world. And so that 6 week, like for me, I write a book in 6 to 7 weeks. So if at the end of that 7 weeks I went, yeah, no, I just need to start it over, my whole world implodes. My pre-orders, everything would just implode. But it's brilliant too that you understand that had to have been mentally taxing the first 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many times. Now you're 9, 10 times into it or what have you. It's probably like, oh, here we go again. But
yeah, it is. And it feels like a sort of, if I know how to make a book much better, like often it has a different narrator in the second draft. It's usually fundamental changes. I sort of feel like duty bound to do that. But yeah, I don't really feel that much anxiety about it. What I do feel anxiety about is when it's not going well, and I don't know why. And it's sort of every year I think, maybe this is the year that it's not going to come. But I'm relieved when I have the kind of moment, because I then sort of, the book, like, it's like it reveals itself to me.
I think we all have that feeling at some point in every book we write that there's like, is this not going to land? And then we still somehow bring it home, and we're like, oh, I don't know why I doubted myself the whole time. But
we've talked about that before. The middle, right? That middle section where you're like, oh man, I don't know, is this going anywhere? And then you get to the end and you kind of do your read through and you're like, oh, I don't know what I was thinking. This was fine. Or you go, no, I definitely missed this whole thing, and you delete the whole thing. So I'm going to jump ahead to a question I was going to say for later. So look, I've been listening to Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I'll sidebar for a second. Did you have any choice in the narrator for that?
Yes. They send you like samples of a few.
Oh, really? Okay. It's different ways with different publishers. So, sometimes they're just, here's what you get. And other times you get some say. So it's interesting that you got some say. I'm going to tell you, she is fucking brilliant.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I didn't know where that was going.
I could see you were looking a little hesitant, like, what's he going to do to me here? Yeah.
I really get told off on these things because I kind of always reveal too much. I didn't want to get into slagging off a narrator.
He's been telling me to listen to it. I haven't had a chance to yet, but because he's been raving about how great it was. But yeah, so.
Oh, good. Yeah, I've never listened to the audiobook, but I assume she's good.
Oh, she's amazing. Like, really, yeah. And I'm fussy about narrators. I guess everyone is. If you're going to listen to it, you don't want a voice in your head you don't want to hear. She keeps you hanging on the words. But I got to tell you, without blowing smoke up your ass, this is one of the best opening scenes in any book I've ever read.
Oh my God. That's, feel free to blow smoke.
Yeah, more smoke, please.
And he never says that to me. It's really, yeah, no.
I'm being funny with him. He has great openings, but I just listened on Outlier Writing University. Hank Philip Ryan just did a talk on opening lines, and it's basically simple, right? The opening line has to get you the reader to read the next line, and then the next line has to get them to read that whole paragraph, and then that gets them to read the page, and blah blah blah, right? So it's not rocket science, but you've got to deliver things. And she kind of broke it down and stuff. I'm like, I wanted to email her and send her the opening of your book and go like this. So there's a twist in the opening scene. It's tense, it builds up, and then there's a twist that's just like, what? That just happened. It's really, really good, Doug. And then there's another twist within the first 10% of the book that is another one that's like, what just freaking happened right there? It's really, really good. So, all right. So I'm done blowing smoke. So my point that I was eventually getting to, and because I was going to ask you about how many times did you rewrite that opening? And then now we know it got put in the bin once, or did it live from that first draft? Because, I mean, yes, you delete it, but you can't forget what you wrote, right? I mean, you still know. You might not know word for word, but you still understand.
The opening chapter was narrated by Todd. That's how different it was. So Once I had the epiphany about the structure and who to narrate, it largely stayed the same. I wanted that twist to be at the end of the novel, the first twist, but I sort of felt like it undermined it because I wanted it to be straight about what she was investigating. But for in the first draft, that twist came at the very end. So you kind of thought it was one thing and it was another.
Right. Okay. I was thinking that's got to be tricky though, because that takes whole. I'm trying not to talk about it and give away the plot, because yeah. I don't know how you do that, quite honestly, because I mean it's so fundamental.
When you do a twist like that, like if you have, and I haven't read it yet, so I can't say, so I won't give it away. But like you're thinking about that twist, like you said, you initially thought about it at the end of the book. So, I mean, what reason would you have, like when you're looking at that kind of suspense that goes with it, to create that? Is there a long thought out process to it, or did you just like you said, an epiphany and like, no, this would work best right here, bam?
I think it really is a kind of seesaw between what would be really cool to reveal, which I err too much on the side of, versus how much am I taking from the reader's narrative experience in order to hide this. And we've all read a thriller where everything is hinted at, someone's got a secret and they're just not telling you. And I kind of think it can be just obscure. And I think later in my career anyway, I've begun to prioritize a more straightforward narrative experience and be like, if I can't do the twist as well, other twists reveal themselves that don't require you to kind of, there's a stabbing in chapter 1 and I had, for an entire draft, I had to refer to it in like a passive voice to hide what had really gone on. And it made it read awkwardly, but it's also like the emotional stakes in what Jen is investigating are what make you read it. And so to take that away and hide it was actually a loss. Sometimes a twist is really worth hanging on to, and it's, a pain in the arse to kind of pull off, but it's worth doing. But it's kind of like weighing it up, I think.
And it's tough because you've heard it I'm listening to it one way, and I'm about a third of the way into the book. I'm listening on the audio, obviously, and I can't imagine it the other way around. The biggest problem is you need to have another twist later on, right? You've got to have something that later on in the book, and you've got this freaking gem. And in your head, that's got to be the big one at the end. Now you move it up front. Now you got to come up with another one to go down there in the book. So, yeah, that would be tricky.
How about from a reader's perspective? I'd imagine like that's gonna be great because you get the, like you say, there's a twist in the first page and then a twist in the first 10%. At that point, you're just kind of holding on for the ride as a reader, I would imagine, and that's got to keep them turning pages.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have a twist 4 chapters into my current work in progress. And actually, I'm a big fan of that because it's kind of like going like, settle in, like nothing is as it seems.
I think there's different ways you can play that. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. When you're a bit more established, like if this is your debut novel, you don't get as many chances to do that. Certainly if you're going to try and pitch it to an agent and then pitch it to a publisher, you got to hit them early, right? So, and I think when you're more established, your publisher, your editors, and your readers know what they're going to get, right? You've given them cake every time. They know they're going to get some cake at some point, so they can stand that. I think it would be trickier if you did it in your first or second book, maybe.
Yeah, and I think it's the biggest error of established authors is that complacency. And I think you've got to write it like this. I'd sell the shit out of this if it was debut, not like everybody knows me. I'll know I'll put a twist in, so I just won't. And I think you can do that once or twice as an established author, but then I think readers are so clever and canny that they just go wise to it and they'll just read someone else.
Readers want the same thing over and over. That's really the truth of it.
I think they do want you to be unique. I think they don't like you to become formulaic, but I think they don't want you to kind of just turn something in that's like 70% of the way there,
Right, yeah. They're used to like everybody wants who they're reading to do the same thing. Like if I kill a lot of people with my books, and if I came through one day and just decided not to, that I think my readers would be a little upset. They're like, the body count's low. So you writing to basically write and then throw it out and start over. You obviously write fairly quickly. What does your writing day look like? You say you write 365 days a year. Do you have a process to it? Do you have like a candle you got to light, or a certain place you got to be, or special magic tea?
No, not really. It's pretty chaotic. You won't be surprised to know. I wrote quite a lot of words a day on the tube, of all places. I know, rattling along on the Northern Line. No, I'm fairly good at kind of concentrating in spots of time. I think probably from having a full-time job for quite a long time of my, I left the law after my 4th book was published. So quite a long time, really. I just make sure to write 2,000 words every day, basically. And I'm not allowed for dinner until I've written them. A simple process.
So a quick question about the trad world. Do you get to work with the same editor all the time? Has that changed?
In the UK, I've had the same editor from the start, and I've been with the same publisher. Although editors do move around a lot, mine hasn't. So she has been my editor since 2017. In the US, I was published by Putnam Penguin for 2 years and had an editor who I loved, then left them and moved to William Morrow. And I've had the same editor. Oh no, I had one editor at William Morrow who left, and then I've had another one since, but I've had her for like 4 years now. So not always, because they do just kind of move around a lot. But if you're lucky, you do. I'm very lucky with my UK editor that we've edited 10 books together now.
Some of the titles are different, UK to US.
Yeah, they are. I'm trying to stop that from now because it's really confusing for readers. I mean, a lot of my early books lent into like more legal themes that my later books don't. And so we use legal jargon, but that just doesn't work in the US. Like one of my novels is called Anything You Do Say, from the police caution of like, kind of like your Miranda rights in the US. But yeah, especially since Wrong Place, Wrong Time has sort of built me a wider US audience, I'm now having simultaneous publications with the same title, which is very helpful because you get like so many Instagram comments of like, I bought this and I'm annoyed I've already read it. It's just got a different.
Yeah. It's the same book. Yeah. And there's different covers. A lot of them, more of them are actually different covers.
I guess that makes sense if you have some things that are colloquial to the UK. But the covers, I never understood why we changed covers up. It does throw me off sometimes.
Between UK and US, I mean, maybe there's people jumping up and down going, yes, it's got to be different. I get the German, French markets, Italian markets have different flavors they like in covers. But between the UK and US, I just don't see it should be that different. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like over here, a thriller might be like a house with a sunset behind it. But I was talking to my US editor and she was like, in the States, people wouldn't think that was a thriller. Like they kind of it might have to have blood on it or something.
No, you have to have an abandoned house in the middle of it. Doesn't matter what the book's about. If it's a thriller, it's got to be an abandoned house on a hillside. And that's the thriller. Okay, so a couple of questions we'll wrap up with here before we let you go. We ask every guest this question. What do you think is your author superpower?
I have a very good memory.
Throwing away a first draft.
I was going to say,
feels
being
like
able to throw away
I don't know
if
if it's a superpower, but it sounds like some kind of power to me.
If it's a superpower, it's like a kind of downfall. No, I pretty much remember everything that I've seen written down. So I use that a lot in editing. Like, if you make a wholesale change and you have to thread it through, I know every page that's affected by that. So that is very easy for me.
Oh, that is a freaking superpower. I've been doing that this morning, trying to find back in my manuscript that I'm only 3/4 of the way through and remembering what this little change, which ones it went to, and it takes me an hour to find them all.
Yeah, I know. I'm very lucky really to have that. It's fading though slightly as I get older, which is annoying.
Look, as we get older, a lot of things fade. Yeah.
Just wait. It doesn't get any better.
I don't even remember my name half the time. So, yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So last question. We have special effects for this. Wheel of questions.
Yes, so it's our last one. It's always a fun one. And I fixed it this morning, Nick, so it's got a real good spin on it, too.
It does. It's going to go forever.
I know, man. Like I was tightening up some of the...
We're going to have someone tap dancing or something to entertain people while that thing still spins.
We're just going to stop it. Do you have any writing superstitions?
I feel like sometimes how I feel about the idea from day one is how I'm going to feel about it. So I think we've all had ideas where we're like, fuck me, that's a great idea, I've got to write it. And we've had ideas like, I think I can get that to work. And I do feel quite superstitious about the ones that just take more working up. They don't come high conceptually as easily, particularly how people react when you pitch the book. If, somebody in your team is like, Yeah, like that's really damaging for me. And I really like it's like the maiden voyage. Like I feel like we've got to set off well in order for us to get there. 'Cause it's like a long journey, right? So I do prefer when it feels like it's easy from the beginning, although that almost never happens. So
All right, this has been brilliant, Gillian. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we really appreciate it. And great luck with the tour.
thank you so much. Bye. Bye.
That was very cool. I did fangirl out in the middle of that, didn't I?
You did a little bit.
I got all excited.
Was like, man, Nick, yes.
I tell you, it's been... I've
It was like Jethro Tull showed up.
Oh, you're killing me. So, yeah, I tell you, I'm excited listening to the book. I mean, it's the combination of the, it's really well written, well written.
I might have to check it out. It's on my, I got Audible credits anyway, so.
Yeah, and I recommend it on Audible. I mean, normally I'd say, read it anyway because you can read it, it's great. But the narration is superb on it. So I can't get over deleting 80,000 words.
That's insane.
It just doesn't exist in our world, right? As an indie, maybe if I wrote as fast as Kevin, who is
like
McLaughlin.
Kevin or Mal, who are like banging out like 10,000 words a day. I mean, she's still doing 2,000 words a day. I was kind of curious, like if she's deleting, how fast. Like, so she's writing the initial one. It's probably a lot like outlining. Like you really Lindy. We talked about her doing a 50,000 word outline. It's probably very similar. It just helps her brain get kind of going. But then she's obviously mastering these twists, and I think that's an incredibly important thing to do in almost any book you write. Doesn't matter the genre. Twists are important.
Yeah. Oh no. Well, yeah. And they're great in almost all genres, but certainly in our world in thriller mysteries and stuff, having a good twist in there. Our friend Kirsten Modglin is the twist meister.
Although Gillian may be giving her a run for the money. So
she's got it in this one. I've got to read another one of Gillian's now.
Yeah, you definitely, you guys sold me on this one. It's gonna be on my list pretty quick, so I can get that one taken care of. So,
but it's got me thinking more and more about it. Right? I mean, for the book I'm writing currently, I've got a path that it's heading down, and I like to try and have a nice twist at the end. That's so, boy, we didn't see that coming. The thing about twists is, and I think we've mentioned this and maybe touched on it before, you can twist, but it has to be, to make it work, it comes out of nowhere, but it can't come out of completely nowhere. Someone that's not been in the book before has had no bearing on it. There's been no touching of it on the story. There's no, the old knife sitting on the mantelpiece or the gun on the mantelpiece. You better do something with it if you put it there. So that breadcrumb, there has to be the breadcrumbs back in the story to pull the twist off when it happens. And that's a big key to it. There's elements to it to make it really work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there's some very big names out there who are known for twists that I feel kind of fall short. But it's just my personal opinion. I think anything, and that, I don't think it just has to be mystery thriller. Like even romance has a degree of twist. While we don't write it, you do have the will they, won't they. That's still a twist in there, And so I think if you look at a twist and suspense in any story, it's not knowing how it ends is the suspense. So you want to make sure that it gets, and for romance, it's not quite as big because everybody wants the happy ending, but there's still a little bit of a twist that we can throw in there. And I think that's kind of important to keep people turning the pages. Because like you said, you get to that first 10% and she's had 2 major twists. Who's putting that book down? Like that's, I would be plowing through it. I don't think I could stop. So that's the key, because the key is, of course, getting people to turn pages. And the best way to do that is to keep them guessing. So.
Absolutely. Right now, I've been reading on my Kindle, and I'm a notoriously slow reader, but I've been reading Alex Sigmore's first book in his Emily Slate series, and I've been listening to Gillian's Wrong Place, Wrong Time on audiobook. So I've got them both going dual, and they're 2 of the most engaging books that I've read in a long time. So it's been good. All right. Well, great chatting with Gillian, and big thanks to our friends at Vellum for their support. You can go to tryvellum.com/2authors to find out more, or just go to the website and check it out. You'll love it if you get it. There's links in the show notes as long as well. Oh my God.
Can you
as
talk?
Well as
Nick is having a stroke right now, guys.
I am. I can't talk. There we go. There's a twist.
Just check our show notes, okay? We got all of our links for our guest information as well as our books, our social media, and just look for new episodes every 2 weeks.
Doug murdered me. Crosswords. All right. Till next time. If I survive, be cool to each other.
And fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favourite platform for alerts on new shows coming every 2 weeks.